want to thank you all for coming. We are so happy to have you here with us today, either in person or online. We're grateful to have you. Today is a special day for me, getting to worship with a good friend, John Cole. I typically only get to see him once a year at camp, so whenever he's here, I'm really excited. And today we're going to be picking up back in Philippians. But the way we're going to get there is going to be just a little bit different because it's me and I'm a little bit different. There it is. We'll be getting back into Philippians. We're going to see, particularly in Philippians today, that as believers, we should be a little bit different, a little bit unique in the way that we live, the way we interact with one another. But I want to see, why are we different? What makes us different? And all throughout Scripture, we see that what makes us different is our mark of love given to us by our Heavenly Father. If you guys were here with me the last time I was speaking, we talked about Peter. In Peter's redemption arc of his story, Jesus looks at him and says, "If you love me, feed my sheep. If you love me, feed my sheep." What he's saying to him without a shadow of a doubt is, if you love me, everyone will know because you're going to love other people. And this isn't the only time he says it. See, in Matthew, when he's pressured by the religious leaders to answer the most important commandment, this is what he answers. And he said to them, "Love the Lord your God with all of your heart, with all of your soul, and with all of your mind. This is the greatest command and the most important. The second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and the prophets depend on these two commandments." We are marked by our love for God, and that will be known by our love for other people. And we're going to find out in Philippians how that difference plays out in our life, but that's the difference. We are marked by love. So would you join us in worship this morning with my good friend, John Cole? Thank you, John. I'm just going to be hard-pressed to follow that. I'm not going to be able to drop a microphone, continue to sing on key, catch the microphone, stake it up, and keep going. So give him a round of applause for that. I'm just not that good. Kids, at this point, feel free to head back to class. I know you guys are waiting eagerly. Thank you for your patience, Z and J. Appreciate it. Everybody else have fun at class. I think you got Sherry and Trista this morning, so you guys are really lucky. If you're in here and debating to go, I'm not back there. I'd recommend you go. It'll be great. Everybody else, we are going to be still in Philippians. We're going to pick it up in chapter 2, verses 12 through 15. Before we get there, you might have noticed by now, I'm not Josh. I know we look a lot alike. We've got the same great sense of humor. I do think his hair is a little bit better, but here nor there. Few slight differences. Unfortunately, Josh won't be with us this morning. He's a little under the weather. I think it's just a bug. I think he's going to be okay. I'll tell you guys, he called me this morning. He's like, "I want to preach, but Candace won't let me." So he's feeling okay. But I'm gonna do my best to fill in what he's got. I told Candace and Jess this morning, but I'll warn all of you, this is going to be the most hybrid sermon you've probably ever heard. If it sounds unrehearsed and unpracticed, it's because I found out it last night. So it is. But I'm going to give my personality into it because I can't take that out of it, and some of Josh's words. So you're going to see me preach like I normally would in some aspects, and sometimes you're going to see me read, and if you find out I'm dyslexic, well, yeah, we'll find out together. So it'll be good. But we're going to start this morning with prayer because Lord knows that I do. Father, thank you so much that we're able to come praise you this morning. That we sing songs to set our heart in the right place. God, I ask this morning what I ask for every morning one of us is up on stage talking, that you be heard. God, most times I ask that that's either through or in spite of. I have a hinting suspicion that'll be in spite of me this morning. But God, may your spirit work, and may our hearts be changed. May we leave looking a little bit more like you. In your son's name we pray. Amen. So if you were able to join us last week, you know that Josh left off in Philippians 2, 5 through 12. And we talked about making our attitude that is the same of Christ Jesus. This week, in 12 through 15, we're going to see that Paul calls us to be a little bit different, calls us to be a light in the darkness. What does that look like? Why do we have that call? And those are the questions we're going to try to unpack today. So then, my dear friends, just as you have always obeyed, not only in my presence, but now even more in my absence, work out your own salvation with fear and trembling. For it is God who is working in you, enabling you both to will and to act for his good purpose. I'm going to pause there. We're going to keep reading. But verse 13 is really important. We talk about working out our own salvation. And I'm going to talk about this in a little bit, but I want to highlight it now. If not for God's intercession, we don't even have the will to do good. much less the capability of it. It's only through God do we have the desire to do good things. We're going to keep reading. Do everything without grumbling and arguing, so that you may be blameless and pure, children of God, who are faultless in a crooked and perverse generation, among whom you shine like stars in the world. Hold firmly the message of life. Then I can boast in the day of Christ that I did not run in vain or labor for nothing. Paul is, of course, writing to a group of believers. He's not writing to those that are unsaved or do not know. If I hit any of your stuff, John, I'm really sorry. I'm going to try to walk really far back behind it. It wasn't there when I was practicing, that one time. But he's not talking to people that don't get it. He's talking to fellow believers. And I want to clarify something. He says, work out your own salvation. And we've talked time and time again that this whole Jesus thing is a relationship. It's not really about what I do. He's done all of the good work. He's put it all together. So what does he mean, work out my salvation? And the two definitions that we're going to work with this morning are salvation and sanctification. Salvation is the one we like to talk about, right? That's the one we talk about at camp and at retreats and revivals. That's the easy one. That's the one, Jesus did everything. I said, thank you, Lord. Now I'm going to heaven. That's great. Cool. But now let's talk about sanctification. It's a lot messier, but it's a lot more real. And it's what's a benefit to us here and now. That sanctification is a process, a refining. In other places in the scripture, we'll hear the reference, the potter and the clay, right? The clay is it's this piece of dirt. Nobody wants it. It doesn't look great. But through the work of the potter, it's molded into something of value, something that someone will go to the store and purchase so they may use as a container or for a decoration. But that process for the clay must not be pleasant, to be mushed and stretched. And then when you're finally positioned just the right way, you're put into immense heat so that you hold that way. Working out our own salvation. It's an interesting topic, but I'm glad it's one that we get to cover this morning. The second thing that I find interesting is the attitude in which we're to approach this. Did you catch the two words? With fear and trembling. I opened this morning saying that we're going to be different, and we don't have to try to be different. At least I don't. The delayed laughter, that was funny. But we're going to be different, and it is our mark of love. So why are we doing this through fear and trembling? There's actually an interesting story about that Josh found from Matt Chandler that I'm going to try to tell the best that I can. Matt Chandler would take his church group to a zoo at a regular occasion. And while they were there, every year they would go, and before they got in, one of the workers at the zoo would tell them, hey, we have special goats. These goats, if you scare them, they're going to faint and look a little bit like that, right? Right. So if you're anything like me, you want to see that in person. So they continue to talk, and they're like, please don't scare the goats. Yes, they'll faint, but it's not good for them. It doesn't do good things for their heart. It shortens their lifespan. But I really want to see it, right? And so Matt says, all the men in the group will turn around, and you know what they're thinking. How can I break that rule, right? How can I scare these goats? Because I want to see that. Anyway, fainting goats, it's really funny. But Matt says, I wonder, instead of fainting goats, what if they were fainting lions? How many of the men would then be so bold to try to scare the lion, right? Now, you're still in the zoo, there's still a little bit of protection, but the fear and the respect for the power of the lion is a little bit greater than the fear and respect for the power of the goat. I don't know if you've ever worked with the goats, they can kick kind of hard, it can hurt, but I ain't messing with a lion. Like, that's my life on the line, right? A goat's a funny story, I end up in the ER, good times. The lion, thanks for coming to my funeral, right? Like, we get the difference there? This is the power. We talk of the Lion of Judah, right? And so we need to understand we're working out this salvation with a God that is big enough to do something about it. That he doesn't just have goodwill, which certainly he does, but the power to back it up, the power to do something with it. And that makes a world of difference as we look at this. So we approach him with this healthy respect, this healthy fear, knowing who he is. But the third thing I want to look at is that verses 12 and 13, they really need to be read simultaneously. We work out our salvation with fear and trembling, for it is God who is working in us, enabling us to desire and to work out his good purpose. Which means, certainly, we have a role to play. We have a job. We are to be faithfully obedient. We are to be servants. We're to approach the throne of grace with fear and with trembling. But ultimately, it's not up to us. Ultimately, God's doing every bit of the work. That when Jesus hung on that cross and said it was finished, he meant it. We don't have to pick up and finish the job. It's done. But we do have a role that we get to participate in. And sometimes we like to get that twisted in our success-driven culture. Maybe that was just me growing up as an athlete. I look in the room, and I know I got a couple of you that are athletes, some super competitive ones. Man, it's hard. It's hard not to be told that we're valuable and based on what we do. That's what we're taught. That's our entire value system. And that's not what we're reading here, so I want to clarify that. That's not what's here. What he's saying is, I've done all the work, and now I'm enabling you to come be a part of it with me. And then the fourth thing we finally get to, because I have to talk for 10 minutes to get to a point, call me a preacher or something, I don't know. But we finally get to the point in verses 14 and 15. And it says this, do everything without grumbling and complaining, so we may be pure and blameless in a crooked and depraved generation, in which we will shine like stars. And I got to tell you, I know this isn't of me because I don't thank Wayne ever. But Wayne set us up well for that, and I appreciate that. He talked about all these sins that we kind of look at, right? Kind of judge a little bit differently, and he listed some hot topic ones. I don't think he was holding back much. We like to look at those sins. Do everything without grumbling and complaining. Want to look in the mirror on that one? I mean, I know that that's not something I can say that I do perfectly. And my brother's sitting in the back. He can tell you we grumble and complain getting in the car on the way home from church every Sunday, right? Especially if we're driving together. Anyway. Do everything without grumbling and complaining? Like, that's a lot. Why would he say that? And to say that, we really need to make the connection all the way back to Deuteronomy 31 and 32. See, in Deuteronomy, we see this is Moses' farewell statement. He is addressing the crowd knowing that it's the end of his life. That's a parallel here with Paul. Remember where Paul is. He doesn't know what his life's going to happen next. This could be his farewell letter. This could be it for Paul. And what Moses tells the people of Israel is that they're a wicked generation because they're busy grumbling, complaining, and they're missing what God's doing. If you don't remember the story, we just went over it in Sunday school, at least my class did with Draven. Moses comes in. Through God's divine intervention, he frees the people from their oppression in Egypt. You think they would be grateful. You think they would be happy. And they were for a bit, until they ran into the Red Sea with the Egyptians on their tail. And what did they do? They grumbled, and they complained. God still provided. He provided for them a way out. They walked on dry land. The Egyptians didn't make it. In the VeggieTales rendition, they end up jumping around on the hot desert sand. It's kind of funny. You could see Draven's confusion. He's like, I thought they died. And I'm like, yeah, it's VeggieTales, okay? But he provides for them. You think maybe they'd get it. No, then they get impatient. God's talking to Moses, telling him how to make things, and they go, hey, Aaron, can you build us a cow? Because we're done waiting on God. They're grumbling and complaining. They're taking control of their own life. That didn't work out for them. Ask Aaron about that. Then they continue. God is in the midst of taking them to the promised land, the place they have wanted to go, where it's flowing with milk and honey. If you have dreamed of the perfect place, and it's not Florida in your head, and I'll pray for you, but, they're on their way to Florida. Nice weather. It's snowing here in Ohio, and we're going south. And they're complaining about waiting in the airport. This is what Moses is dealing with. So I'm not overly surprised. He's less than enthusiastic to write this letter. And he's like, you wicked generation, don't you see God's working for you right here, right now? And you're busy complaining about how he's doing it instead of seeing him working? Really? The parallel between these two is pretty apparent. But Paul is just a little bit more optimistic than Moses was. Maybe that's not the right word, but when you read it, Paul is saying, he starts by complimenting them. You have done so well when I was with you. You're doing great now, even in my absence. But he then ends with a plea. Continue to do well. Continue to do things without grumbling and complaining, so that I may boast when I stand before Christ. Look at the work of your church. Look at what you let me help lead. He's very hopeful that they're going to continue to be a light, that they're going to be different from the culture that they stand in. But see, the crazy thing is that Paul could be writing that letter to us today. We could be that church. We could be the ones that are on the right path right now. And we have this warning. Don't fall back. Don't start grumbling and complaining when God starts moving stuff and you're not ready for it. The way he moves it isn't the way you expected it. The way he moves it isn't the way you wanted it, but it's still God moving it. And so it's good. And I'm going to show you guys something that I used to play with as a kid. You guys can laugh if you say was a kid, because yes, I am still one. I'm just one that has to drive now. It's kind of boring. But let me see if I can move this without breaking anything. It's not a Jenga set, so I should have some success. Oh, nope, see? Told you. It's still stuck, isn't it? Am I off yet? No? It's like wrapped, isn't it? Emily, how many times did I do this last night and not have that problem? Remember, I thanked Wayne. Now I'm going to blame Wayne. I don't know how it's his fault, but I'm going to say he did it. Any objections to that? Okay. Now I got to figure out how to open Josh's water bottle. Yeah, push it. And then what? Up. No grumbling or complaining from me. No, not going to happen. You ain't going to trick me. Well, as entertaining as that was. Do you guys remember these? Sorry, that phone completely threw me off. You guys remember these as a kid? I used to play with them in the bathtub because the only time you could get me to sit still long enough for them to actually dissolve. But they're pretty cool. So you put these things in some hot water, and the plastic layer is going to wear off, and it's going to transform into something new and cool. And so I'm going to sit that in there, and it takes a second or two, and hopefully it doesn't take as long as it did with the cold water, because it does say warm water, but apparently I don't read as well as I don't math. I don't know where Micah and Layla are to laugh at that, but there they are. So it is going to change, hopefully, for us. I'm going to get it out of the corner just because I'm nervous if it sits there. It's not going to do anything. Well, the good news is, Candace, that water is definitely still hot. But as that begins to change, hopefully relatively quickly, I just think it's interesting that Paul's not saying that we have to try to be different. As you guys just saw impromptu, I don't have to try to be different. It happens, right? But as it comes to our faith, he's not talking about going and standing on the street corner and yelling at people. He's not talking about hitting people over the head with the Bible, though sometimes that's fun, especially in youth ministry, but here nor there. I got hit in the head a couple of times. But he's talking about that our lives are just going to be different. And it's not that our blessings or that our tragedies are going to be any different. It's going to be our responses to them. I want you to know, time and time again, I've seen non-believers get blessed incredibly. I've seen non-believers get blessed financially. I've seen them get blessed with positions at work. I've seen them get blessed with incredible families, with athletic ability, with relational skills. But I've seen believers get blessed that way too. The difference is not in the blessing. It's in the response to it. For when a non-believer is blessed financially, well, it's theirs, right? They can do whatever they want. Whatever will make them happy. Whatever brings them joy. When a believer is blessed financially, it's not theirs. And I'm not just talking about the 10% that we give to church on Sunday morning. No, the other 90% is God's too. And so how I spend that reflects what I believe. Am I generous? Am I giving that to whoever needs it? Am I building a bigger wall or a bigger table? And the list goes on, and I could go on with any of the blessings. Relationally, if you're a non-believer, man, you use that ability to have everyone like you. Use that ability to grow as much influence as you can. Maybe you're a social media influencer. Maybe you become a politician, but you use it for your own ability, for your own good. But if you're gifted relationally and you're a believer, use that ability to connect with people for the sole purpose of teaching them who Jesus is, because that's the best thing for them. Unfortunately, the same is true with tragedy. I've seen tragedy strike believers. I've seen it strike non-believers. Church, you know as well as I do, a couple years ago were hard for us. I think we had a funeral every month for a while there. Loss happens. And maybe it's serious loss like that. Maybe it's simply just loss of, your athletic ability. When I was in high school, I could go to the gym and be fine the next day. Man, I went to gym on Friday with my fiance, and if you thought I got better at pacing, my legs just hurt from leg day, okay? I was trying to show off a little bit. Things break down, they decay. We lose people. But the way we respond to that shows our difference. This is how we're different. I want to tell you, when I was 13 or 14, one of my friends in middle school lost their dad. And I wasn't new to death at that point. I'd been through plenty of family funerals, but every funeral I had been to at that point was of that of a believer. And so it was sad. There was always this hope, always this comfort. I don't think I'd ever been in a more depressed setting in my life. Because I'm sitting here next to my friend, knowing that he's not a believer, knowing that his father was not a believer, and hearing this preacher up on stage trying to give every word of comfort she could, but ultimately, what could she say? He wasn't in a better place. He wasn't going to see him again. The best comfort they have is that there's people still alive that love you, and hopefully you'll move on and get better. The difference as a believer, I don't want to say that there's no pain. There is. I had to laugh about it. Even on Friday, we took my parents out for their anniversary. They shared that anniversary with my grandma and my grandfather. My grandma passed away in 2016. I was a senior in high school. It still hurts. I'm still aware of it. But there's hope. She is better. I know how sick she was before she left. And I know one day God's going to call me home. I'm going to see her again. And my response to that can be completely different. I'm not depressed. I'm not shut down. I have hope. I have a joy for the future to come because God is still in control. And that's not that I'm great. It's not that I somehow have some energy. It's that God has changed me. And so we're going to be different in the way that we respond. And it's not going to be something that we have to try to do. Let's see if I can help expedite this a little bit. I had a squid last night. I'm trying to figure out what the crab, the formed crab. I'm going to go with the crab. I think, yeah, it's working on it. It's a one-armed crab, okay? It's working on the other arm. Yeah, we're going with a crab. Okay, if it's not a crab, my bad. It's a different crab, okay? Leave it alone. Don't make fun of my crab, Aaron. See, the crab doesn't have to try to be any different from these pills. It is different. It looks different because it's been changed. It's been changed from the inside out, right? And so when it comes to being a believer, I'm going to drop that back in there and see if it develops into a crab or something else, and we can make fun of me after service for that. We don't have to try to put on a mask. We don't have to try to not be hurt when bad things happen. It's okay to be hurt. It's okay to be upset. We don't have to try to not be excited when good things happen. Man, you got the job, be excited. That's great news. But what are we going to do with that? How are we going to respond? And that'll mark us different. And the encouragement is that we respond out of love. I love Josh's illustration for this, maybe because I like food and it has to do with food. I don't know. But something happens as we grow up. Things begin to change, right? Or you think it's going too weird, it's your taste buds. Okay? Foods that we used to like, we just don't like anymore. They don't taste as good. Listen, I used to love Kraft mac and cheese as a kid, okay? It was like my favorite thing in the world. I'd eat it like 3 times a day, honestly. And I was perfectly happy with that. I've kind of grown past that a little bit, okay? I don't desire to have Kraft mac and cheese. If it's on the table, I'll eat it, but it's not like, I'm not going to go make it for myself, right? Things develop, they change. I didn't really like steak as a kid. I love steak. Can't get me away from it now, right? You grow, you develop. Things you didn't like, you now like all of a sudden. And things you used to love, you don't like as much. And part of that's chemical, part of that's, what you're eating. Maybe you got married and you're going to eat what your spouse puts on the table. You're going to starve, so you might as well like it, right? Sorry, I'm trying to be a better cook. Anyway. But you've changed. What you want has changed. Your desires have been changed. And this is the change Paul is talking about. It's not that we're going to have to try to be better. It's not that we're going to have to read our Bible more. God is going to change us so much that we're going to want to read our Bible more. It's not we're going to sit down and, I got to pray today. Man, I can't wait till I get to go spend time with God because it's been a long day and I don't know what else to do. I want to be with my Father right now. It's not that you have to go evangelize and tell people about him. Man, I can't wait to come tell you all about Jesus. He's the best thing that's ever happened in my life. It's not that you have to disciple the next generation and teach them what's coming next. It's, man, I know how I got here and I know how great my life is. I can't but not do that for the next person coming up. This is the change that Paul's talking about. But see, it's all the good things, but it also has to do with sin. And this, I couldn't tell this story without telling a story of me being in youth group in 6th grade. Josh happened to be my youth minister. Coincidence. But we were talking about desire. And particularly, we're talking about Jesus being tempted. And how I'm going to connect that to Five Guys, hold on, but I promise I will, and it'll make sense. It's not just because I want Five Guys. Maybe a little bit. Talking about Jesus in the desert. He's tempted with some pretty good-looking stuff. Man, if you promised me the whole world, I think I'd think twice about it before I told you no, especially if I knew the pain I had to go through if I did it God's way. I might think about it. How about to show how great I am? Anybody ever fall for that one? Just me? Okay. He was tempted with some pretty good stuff. He didn't seem to bat an eyelash. And I remember being frustrated as a 6th grader, and I was just like, Josh, how can you say no? How can you just say no so easily? I'll never forget the explanation. It's because he tasted better. He knew what God offered. We were in Fairlawn. I was corrected this morning, and during my rehearsal, I was going to tell you it was Friday. It was Thursday. We were in Fairlawn. And in Fairlawn, if you come down the way I get off, on the left, there's a McDonald's, and then there's a Five Guys. And if you don't know what I'm talking about when I say Five Guys, come after service. I'll pray for you. It's an incredible burger. Like, you got to try it. It changed my life. I mean, and then the amount of fries they give you. Anyway, it's really good. But I've never once in my life been driving in Fairlawn and gone, I want a burger. I'm going to pull into McDonald's. It just didn't happen. I'm not trying to say anything against McDonald's. If you love McDonald's, like, again, I'll pray for you. But it's all right. It's a burger, right? But I've never once in my life been tempted to go get McDonald's when Five Guys is right there. I want a real burger with seasoning that's actually put on a grill and not a frozen thing that they microwave that may or may not be beef, right? I'm saying I don't know what's in it. I want the Five Guys. And see, this is what Jesus knew. His desires had been so changed that the fleshly desires, he didn't want that anymore. His taste buds had changed. He'd gone past that. He wanted what God offered. And he wasn't settling for anything less. You see, that's the glory of being changed from the inside. We know what tastes better. We get to live that way. And so if we catch ourselves grumbling, catch ourselves complaining, even if we catch ourselves going, man, I really have to do this today, I think it's a good idea to pause and pray and go, God, can you start changing my heart? I don't want to have to pray. I want to pray. I don't want to have to tell people about you. I want that to be my desire so much that I can't shut up about you. God will work in us. He will change our desires. We're told that in verse 13. We will begin to want to look different. So then what is our task? If we want to look more like him, we need to seek and obey him. And I'll tell you, the most encouraging thing about this message for me is that we don't have to try to be the love of Christ in our community. If you're a guest or first time and you don't understand that reference, that's our mission statement. That is what we say we exist for, is to be the love of Christ in our community. For those of us that have been changed, we don't have to try to do that. It'll be our desire, and we'll want nothing more. I'm going to ask my friend John to come back up, and we're going to sing a closing song together, properly entitled Trust and Obey. And if you are like me and you've been around church for a while, man, I ask that's a celebratory song for you, that we get to trust and obey. And it's the most exciting thing about our lives. And if you're sitting here, or you're online, and you haven't got that good news of Jesus coming in and giving you peace where peace doesn't exist, giving you love in the middle of those tragic circumstances, we're sitting right over there. I'd love to have that conversation with you. Please stand with John.